Now, this is when John the Baptist was in prison. Now, many of you know John the Baptist was the forerunner for Jesus Christ. He's the one who introduced him. In modern day terms, we might say John the Baptist was the mascot. In other words, you have the big football stadium, and all of a sudden, John the Baptist starts running out, carrying the banner. Dun, 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 dun. He comes out the center field, and then Jesus is behind him. That's what he was in modern day terms. He was the forerunner. He was the one who came out before him. Now, this is John the Baptist in prison. Listen to this. Now it came to pass when Jesus finished commanding, Matthew 11:1. Now it came to pass when Jesus finished commanding his 12 disciples that he had departed from there to teach and preach in their cities. And when John had heard in prison, underline that. Wait a minute, Jesus, I'm your eight-spoon coon. I'm not supposed to be in prison. I'm not supposed to be experiencing any difficult time. And when John had heard in prison about the works of Christ, he sent two of his disciples. And he said to him, listen to this question. Notice when life turns around on you, when life places you in an awkward situation, notice how your thinking can turn. He's asking the question, are you the coming one, or do we look for another? This is John the Baptist who introduced Jesus to the world. Are you still that same dude? You know, the one we study at church? The one we read about? Are you the one who still does miracles? Are you the one who still heals? Are you the one who still provides funds? Are you the one who still turns? He says, are you the one, or do we look for another? Have you ever been tempted to look for another when Jesus has disappointed you and you feel incarcerated, locked up? Jesus answered and said to them, go tell John the things which you hear and see. Listen carefully. The blind see, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear, and the dead are raised up, and the poor have the gospel preached to them. Here's a very powerful verse. Blessed is he who is not offended because of me. Now, think about this. If there is anyone who had a right to be disappointed, look at the facts. Number one, John the Baptist is his cousin. His cousin's in jail, and Jesus is out there saving the world. Number two, John the Baptist introduced him to the public. He gave him a shot, so to speak. Notice, number three, he wouldn't be John the Baptist unless he had baptized him. So he baptized him in the Jordan River. Number four, after he introduces him, he takes a back seat to him. Now that's tough. And think about this. After doing all that, he's sitting in jail. This is so deep. Hearing about all these miracles that Jesus is doing for other people. Wow. Now let's be honest. Sometimes the hardest thing in the world is to hear testimonies about how other people are being blessed and you're still struggling. That's tough. And to come from somebody that you love so dearly, and on the surface, it seems like he had a right on the surface to feel kind of disappointed, to feel kind of slighted. We know with Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, he says, couldn't you just stand here just one more hour and pray? Just 1 hour. I fed you for the last 3 years. I gave you your spiritual assignment. You knew my heart. You watched me serve people. You watched me produce miracles. You saw how I've given myself totally to people, and you can't stand here for 1 hour for me? Jesus had the right to be disappointed. John the Baptist was disappointed. Look at the words of King David. Psalm 41, verse 9. I'll read it to you. He says, even my own familiar friend, whom I trusted, who I ate bread with, has lifted up his heel against me. David's saying someone that I trusted, someone that I went to BBQs with, someone that I broke bread with, my trusted companion, has turned against me. Psalm 55, verse 12. It says, for it is not an enemy who reproaches me, then I could bear with it. Nor is it one who hates me who has exalted himself against me, then I could hide from him. But it was you, a man my equal, my companion and my acquaintance. We took sweet counsel together and walked to the house of God. Wow. David's being very honest about his disappointment. Now, keep in mind, Jesus said John the Baptist up until that point was the greatest man who ever lived. Acts tells us David is a man after God's own heart. Jesus is the greatest man who ever lived, period. And yet, in these cases, and I could give you other examples. 2 Samuel 22, it talks about how the men departed from David. But what's my point? These are all men that God used mightily, but in their autobiography, part of the curriculum was learning how to deal with deep, deep disappointment. Notice you don't faith out disappointment. You learn how to grieve the hurt, release the debt, forgive the person. Now, I just want to make one last comment, and then we're going to close. One of the things, this is something that I've learned, and it's taking me a long time to learn, so this is a freebie. But one of the things that we have to learn is the fact that there are some relationships that come into your life for a season, then they end. And then there are other relationships that are designed to be long-term. I just got married, as many of you know, and it's interesting panning the room at the people who are there. Some are newer relationships, some are people I've known 30 years. But it's important to be able to make that distinction, because if you don't make that distinction, you'll live a very frustrated life when you have a series of short-term relationships that you're hoping will build, and then they don't go anywhere and just fall off the cliff. And the wisdom that you need to learn is that some people have the willingness to see your imperfections and work through issues, and they have the willingness to engage in that process and stay with the path with you. Those are the people that you're designed to have long-term relationships with. There are other people who just like the intoxication of a new friend, new experiences. You introduce them to something. You introduce them to golf. You introduce them to parties. You introduce them to a certain type of, party, whatever it is. But once that intoxication leaves, they leave. And if you look at their life, it's just a series of short relationships. I'm not passing judgment, but it's important because if you don't make that distinction, you can become very wounded by people who you discover very quickly when they see a flaw in you, that they're not willing to work past the issue, and then wonder why they're not part of your future. I learned something very interesting, and we'll close on this. In China, there's a phrase called the art of regret. The art of regret. And you know what it deals with? Believe it or not, of all things, it deals with photography. And the reason it deals with photography is because, think about it, if you look at a picture, what is a picture? A picture is simply capturing a single moment from the past. And oftentimes, people are smiling, they're having fun, they're enjoying themselves. But this phrase, the art of regret, is very powerful because you have to, like a picture, you have to learn how to be able to look back and say that was a moment. That was a smile. That was something that we shared. And deal with the fact or deal with the frustration that may not be the current situation. And it may not be the future. That was a snapshot from the past. Enjoy it, reflect on it with fond memories. But if you try to bring that photograph from the past into the present and project it into the future, when the other person is not committed to the same process, you'll be very frustrated. So, in conclusion, what's our point? In order to fulfill your destiny, you must learn, I must learn, to deal with the relationships that have disappointed us. Amen?
Amen.